Today, I will be reacting to your hot takes. Subscribe and like the video if you do go on to enjoy. Let's hop into it. Jalen Hurts is the new face of the league. Now, let me get this clear. I do not agree with this statement basically at all. When I think of the face of the league, I don't really think about who won the title most recently, because if we did so, then in 2021, the face of the league would have been Matthew Stafford or Cooper Kupp, or the past couple years, it would have been Patrick Mahomes, and probably this year to be Jalen Hurts. I'm somebody who believes the face of the league is the quarterback who is the most dominant over a current stretch of time. I just don't ever see a non-quarterback ever being the face of the league. I think if there ever was a non-quarterback who you could ever consider to be the face of the league, it would have to be somebody who was so dominant for so many years while also being very vocal in the media. And right now, even though guys like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Saquon Barkley are putting up insane numbers, I wouldn't classify them as being face of the league. So because it is a face of the league conversation, it's always going to be about the quarterbacks. Me personally, I still believe the face of the league is Patrick Mahomes. He has been the most dominant quarterback, especially come playoff time, over the course of what has been, 8 or 9 years now. I do not think Jalen Hurts is honestly even in the top 3 conversation. Yes, I know he won a title, but Josh Allen has an MVP. Lamar Jackson has multiple MVPs, has had some very successful seasons. I know they haven't had the playoff success that Jalen Hurts has had, but I just don't really think that Hurts is like the face of the league by no means. By the way, if you want to be featured in next hot take video, I will be posting on the community tab quite frequently throughout the season, so just keep an eye on the community tab where you can put in and submit your hot takes. Joe Burrow will win the MVP. This is a really interesting hot take. In terms of the MVP favorites right now, I'd kind of assume it's again going to be Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. It feels like those two are probably going to win a lot of MVPs throughout their careers because they can put up the statistics, they can put up the team success. They have kind of that aura and energy surrounding them. For Joe Burrow, he also has a lot of those same things, but unfortunately for Joe Burrow, he is in a much more difficult situation than a guy like Josh Allen or a guy like a Lamar. And even if an outsider were to win the MVP, not named Lamar, Patrick, or Josh Allen, I think there's a better shot for some other guys to get there just because of the team success factor that has to be taken into account when talking about the MVP award. I think there's a strong argument to be made that last year Joe Burrow was statistically the most impressive quarterback in the NFL and arguably the most valuable player on their respective team. Like, you take Joe Burrow off that Bengals team, they're probably not winning more than 4 or 5 games last year. But because Joe Burrow is such an awesome quarterback, I think he made himself a really strong argument to be the more valuable player, but he still wasn't even really considered heavily for the award because of the fact his team didn't even make the playoffs last year. And so I feel like for Joe Burrow to win the MVP, he needs to have similar to around the same statistics as last year. Maybe not as good because last year was incredible, but if he can get around the same numbers while also having the team enter into the playoffs, then I think you can possibly put the formula together to give Joe Burrow the MVP. I also think he's a fan favorite, so that also does help. So there could be a push for him to win it if he has a successful season and if they win like 10 games next year. Right now, I'm going to say it probably won't be Joe Burrow, but I could see a path for Joe Burrow to win this award. JJ McCarthy's first year starting will be better than Daniels. He'll get Kevin O'Connell his first few playoff wins and will be at least in the MVP discussion and will win Comeback Player of the Year. I'm going to take a wild guess here and say this is probably a Minnesota Vikings fan. Listen, there really is nothing for me to work off when it comes to talking about this take. We've seen one preseason game from JJ McCarthy, one, and while he looked awesome and incredible in that preseason game, there have been a lot of other players in the history of the NFL that have gone in the preseason, cooked and played like absolute ballers, and then got to the regular season and were nothing like that version of themselves. So it's incredibly hard for me to even predict this. Plus, you also have to take into account the dude's coming off a leg injury. I know his game is not based off athleticism, but there's going to be some moments where he's going to have to move around in the pocket, trust his foot, trust his leg. And, there's going to be a period of time where he's going to probably be a little bit uncomfortable and, trying to navigate how to play with this injury that he had last year. And also, he's probably going to be a little bit cautious to not have further injury to his leg. So to say he's going to have a better first year than Jaden Daniels, to me, is a little bit rich, especially when we're talking about how successful Jaden Daniels was in his rookie season, leading a Commanders team that had far less talent than this Minnesota Vikings team, leading them all the way to the playoffs, not just one round, not just 2 rounds, but 3 rounds deep, making it all the way to the NFC Championship game in just his rookie season. To me, I don't think that it's really even realistic to put JJ McCarthy in those conversations. I don't even want to compare the two because Jaden Daniels, his rookie season might go down as like one of, if not the greatest rookie seasons for a quarterback of all time. And I'm not really wanting to put JJ in those conversations right now. In terms of winning Comeback Player of the Year award, though, I actually think that is a realistic award for him to actually go for. A lot of times the Comeback Player of the Year goes to a guy who's coming off a big major injury, and a guy like JJ McCarthy, if he has a successful rookie season, he could be in discussions for that award. In terms of MVP, it's probably not going to happen, at least this year. Could he enter the conversation in a couple years down the road? Maybe. I'm not really going to predict that far in the future now. But again, guys, one preseason game. Let's just have a little bit of some patience here. Mahomes is the most talented quarterback, but has made dumb decisions and can't get rid of the ball like an elite pocket passer. So let me get this straight. Patrick Mahomes, the guy that's won, 3 to 4 Super Bowls, is a dumb decision maker and is not an elite pocket passing quarterback. Again, I know he's had some talented teams, and yes, I know that game against Philadelphia was not a, awesome performance from Patrick. He made a lot of dumb decisions. He had a couple interceptions that were frankly his fault, and he didn't really play all that well. But guys, we have a whole list of other accomplishments this guy has succeeded with the past several years. Beating the Buffalo Bills to get to the Super Bowl multiple times, beating the Baltimore Ravens to make it to the Super Bowl multiple times, beating the Cincinnati Bengals multiple times, winning the Super Bowl multiple times, and we're going to call him a bad decision maker? That's just not correct. Now, if you want to say that he is the most talented quarterback who at times can make these mistakes, I guess, but every quarterback makes mistakes. He's not a bad decision maker. This guy has won an MVP, has put up ridiculous statistics, and I'm not even a Mahomes guy. I can't even believe I'm defending Mahomes because I'm not even a Mahomes guy. I'm a Cowboys fan, so the Chiefs are like one of my least favorite teams out there, but I'm going to defend him here. This dude is the most clutch quarterback in the NFL. When it's fourth quarter and you need a game-winning drive, you're not putting anybody else out there besides Patrick Mahomes if you had your choice of a quarterback, because you'd want Patrick Mahomes. He's one of the best decision makers in the fourth quarter, in the clutch, when it matters most. And again, the numbers, the awards, the accolades, they speak for themselves. I think this is a bit of a weird kind of hot take to have after just one bad Super Bowl performance. I just disagree basically on everything you just said. The Jets go 10-7, get the 6th seed, and win a playoff game. This is an interesting take. Look, I'm not really a Jets guy going into the season. I know there's a lot of recent build, I feel like, over the last couple weeks surrounding Jets fans and their faith in their roster kind of improving because of what they've heard about Justin Fields. And look, last year was not a very good season for this team. I really don't even want to put the blame on, I guess, just one shoulder. There's a lot of people to blame for what happened last year, but this year, it's hard for me to say you're going to go 10-7. I will say the AFC is kind of open. The top 4 seeds, I feel like, are kind of locked up, assuming no injuries happen. Like Buffalo will probably win the division. The Ravens will probably win their division. The Texans probably will win their division. And then you have, of course, the Chiefs, who are probably going to win theirs as well. And then you look at who can probably win the 5th and 6th seed to make the wild card. I'm going to assume the Chargers and Broncos probably will be in the conversation. So that does open up the 7th seed to potentially be taken by an outside roster. Right now, if I had to say who I think is going to be that 7th seed, I have a feeling it might be like a Pittsburgh or Cincinnati. Maybe a team like Jacksonville can rise back up, or Indianapolis can have a good year. I just think there's a lot of other contending teams that could get that spot. I don't think the Jets would be my favorite to get into the playoffs, and especially in the wild card. As a 6th seed especially, I think it's more likely they'll come in as a 7th seed. But I think they're going to have to beat a lot of different teams for that 7th seed role. And just right now, I think there's a lot of other probably more talented and a bit more top-heavy rosters that could get into that 6th or 7th seed. Again, like the Miami Dolphins, for example, I do think the Jets might have a better roster than Miami, but Miami's top-end talent could get them there, especially because they have a Tua and a Tyreek Hill. Same thing with Cincinnati. I do think the Jets have a very competitive roster with the Cincinnati Bengals, but the Bengals have Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, and T. Higgins that can elevate that roster. I just don't know if the Jets necessarily have that guy on the offensive end who can elevate this team. Yes, you have some good running backs. Yes, you have Garrett Wilson. And I know your offensive line's improved, but, I'm just not the biggest believer in Justin Fields because he hasn't really proved anything to me through multiple stints. I do think this is probably his best opportunity to do so. But again, it's just hard for me to believe that he's going to go 10-7 in his first year with the Jets with the rookie head coach as well. Look, I'm glad you're optimistic, and it could happen. I'm not saying it's a total, not happening sort of situation. I'm just going to say, it's likely not going to happen. Ravens will win the Super Bowl. Geno Smith has a shockingly good season. So 2 hot takes here and 1. And frankly, I don't really think either of these are necessarily hot takes. Ravens winning the Super Bowl, they're one of the favorites to win it. I still would like to think that the Chiefs are probably the favorites or the Eagles are the favorites. But then I think right underneath them, if not even a little bit above the Chiefs, is the Baltimore Ravens. They're ridiculously talented and a lot of pressure on Lamar, Derrick Henry. And it feels like this sort of has to be their season, or at least this year or next year. So it's fair for this team to be in conversations for Super Bowl contention. In terms of Geno Smith, look, I think Geno's had good seasons the past couple of years. I know that last year was not his statistical best season of all time, or compared to other quarterbacks, he is not the greatest statistics guy, but he's been playing some pretty darn good football, and he's on a team in Las Vegas with not a lot of pressure. There won't be a ton of eyeballs on him because Vegas fans will be watching him, but outside fans just are not the biggest believers in them. Whereas with Seattle, there was some pressure to make the playoffs. Not a ton of pressure on the Raiders this season, so I could see Geno Smith being really comfortable in a situation where he's under his old head coach. He's got a bunch of fun pieces to work with. It'll be a fun year for the Raiders, and I think Geno Smith will have a good season too. Baker Mayfield will win MVP and cement himself as a player who should be in everyone's top 10 quarterback list. Well, for starters, I don't think that everyone has to have Baker Mayfield in their top 10. It's everyone's respective opinions. For me, he would probably be my 10th or 11th best quarterback in the league. And if he has another great year next year, then yeah, he'd probably be inside my top 10. But everyone can have their own respective opinions. If they don't think Baker's top 10, that is what it is, right? Regardless of that, Baker Mayfield winning MVP is a dark horse contender that I'm actually quite a big fan of. Statistically speaking, last year, this dude put up some ridiculous numbers. And I do think if this Buccaneers team can make the playoffs, then I think you also have the team success factor that goes into winning the MVP award. The big thing that Baker Mayfield's going to need to prove in order to get himself in MVP conversations, can he limit the turnovers? Can he elevate his team without offensive coordinator Liam Cohen? And can he outperform other quarterbacks gunning for the award, like a Joe Burrow, like a Mahomes, like an Allen, like a Lamar? 4 crazy names you have to compete against, but if you have better numbers against them and you're also performing at a high level, making a playoff spot, I think he could enter the conversation. He wouldn't be my favorite, but I think he could enter conversations. Eagles gonna take a step back due to Saquon Barkley Madden curse injury. They finished second in the NFC East. Cowboys win the division this year, 100. I highly think this can really happen too. 100, bear down. For starters, I love the emojis. This is really funny. Look, I do think the Eagles will win the division, right? But the Madden curse is like, it's hit and miss some years, but some years it feels like it's kind of freaking true. Christian McCaffrey, the Madden cover last year, barely played this year. Now it's Saquon Barkley. Obviously, I am hoping and praying that no injuries happen to him because he's one of the NFL's best players. But as a Cowboys fan myself, I just have to say I would not necessarily be too mad if the Eagles did take a step back. Hopefully, of course, not because of the Saquon injury. Hopefully, it's for other reasons. Because if that does happen, then I could see a world where the Cowboys or the Commanders win the division and the Eagles are like the 2nd or 3rd seed. Again, I don't think this is going to happen. I really do think the Eagles are set up for success. I know they lost a lot of pieces this offseason, but they've been kind of building up their bench and building up for situations like this where you have a Nolan Smith sitting on the bench for multiple years. You have a Moro Ajomo, you have a Kili Ringo, and a handful of other guys that have been developing and sitting behind, like very talented players too. And now it's going to be their chance to prove themselves. And they also had they also made a couple of smart decisions in free agency too, where they went out there and took a guy like Azeez Ojulari and a handful of other pieces. So it's not like an impossibility that they take a step back. It's definitely possible, but I think right now the Eagles are probably a safe bet to win the NFC East. Though I will say, I could be wrong with this, I don't think there's been a repeat NFC East winner since like early 2000s or like the 90s or something like that. So I mean, the NFC East is one of those weird divisions where anything can happen. Cam Ward balls out and the Titans win 6 to 7 games. I don't think he will have the impact that Jaden Daniels or CJ Stroud had on their team, but he will ball out and show signs of eliteness. I think this is best case scenario for the Tennessee Titans. I think Titans fans realize they're probably not going to win any sort of massive wins this season. They're probably not going to be a playoff team. But if they can get to like 5 or 6 or like you said, 7 games where they win, that's a pretty good start to your career if you are Cam Ward, especially if you show signs of being an elite quarterback, of being an elite processor and decision maker, being able to make plays outside as a playmaker, while also, not having so many turnovers. If he can do that in his rookie season, I think that'll give everyone a a lot of confidence in what they're building. Because, for example, like a Will Levis, when he came in there, he obviously showed a lot of glimpses and some good moments, but there wasn't the consistency throughout his entire time there. I think for me, if he can have a year where he's consistently good, but he also has spurts of elite play, then that is a really good sign for the future of Cam Ward. Hopefully he can find that consistency at some point this year. It probably won't be early on, but after like week 6, if he can have a consistent, solid end to his career, end to his season, I should say, then that would be a good first season for Cam Ward. Bryce Young going to dominate all year and make a very impressive playoff run. So for Bryce Young, I do think this is potentially his year to break out and look like the quarterback that he was drafted to be. With that said, I still think that Panthers team is just way too far away from being an actual playoff contender. Not to mention the NFC is actually kind of loaded this year with a handful of really good teams, but also the middle of the pack this year is really competitive. You have the likes of the Commanders, who will probably not be the winner of their division, but they'll be fighting for a wild card spot. The Cowboys, basically the entirety of the NFC North. I think the Falcons could enter those conversations. I think the Niners will be there. I think the Cardinals will also be there. So there's about, 7 to 8 teams next year that are going to be fighting for, playoff spots in the wild card especially. And I just think it's going to be quite difficult for a Panthers team that still has a lot of flaws defensively to get themselves in that conversation. I do think they can take a step forward offensively, though. I think last year they were probably a bottom 10 offense or so, especially, if we're just taking into account the entirety of the season. But that back stretch of games, the offense did improve and look a lot better. You now add in a Tetairoa McMillan, who I think will have a lot of opportunities to make some big plays this year. I could see this offense entering into like top 18 conversations as like a 17th or 18th best offense in the NFL, which I think would be a nice step forward. The big question for this team is just, what does the defense look like? If the defense is all of a sudden really good next year, then cool. I just don't think it's going to happen. You're going to be relying so heavily on rookies like Nick Scorton and Princey Amamielen. You're also just hoping you can stay healthy. And I like some of the moves they've made, and I think they are a better roster than what they were last year. But I think a good step forward is a consistently good season from Bryce Young and probably like 7 to 8 wins next year. If you can get to that, then I feel pretty good about your future, because right now it's a little bit up in the air. I'm not expecting any sort of playoff run though. Trevor Lawrence is a bottom 5 quarterback in the league, but is still carried by his college clout. This is an interesting hot take. Now, let me get this clear. Bottom 5 quarterback to me is a little bit harsh, especially when you're saying that he's worse than some rookie quarterbacks potentially. Like, look, Trevor Lawrence is not a perfect quarterback. I think he sometimes struggles to read the field. I think he has glimpses of good play, glimpses of bad play. I also think, look, he's been thrown into some shitty situations where he walked into year 1 with Urban Meyer, and then the past couple years at Doug Peterson, and just hasn't quite worked. Now he has probably, in my opinion, his best opportunity with Liam Cohen and a pretty talented roster around him with Brian Thomas Jr., Anton Harrison on the tackles. Now you add Travis Hunter. You, of course, you have the same running backs as last year. So I think there's a possibility this offense does take a step forward. And in terms of being a bottom 5 quarterback, like, he's not bottom 5. There's plenty of worse quarterbacks to have out there. He's definitely not like top 10 or top 15, but I think he's a talented quarterback that still has a lot to prove. So I'm going to give him a bit of a pass here. I disagree with this one. All right, that is going to conclude this video. If you want to be a part of the next hot take video, I'll be doing this throughout the regular season, almost weekly. So if you want to be a part of it, check my community tab every couple days and I'll have a post and you can put your post there and I'll screenshot it and let you know if you're going to be in the video. Anyways, hopefully you enjoyed. Love you guys. Peace.